Our next presentation will look at player interest from a game perspective. What kind of games are players actively looking for? And how does this relate to what operators are offering? Here to tell us more about this is Jeffrey Haas, Chair of Data Analytics Company Blask, coming from Copenhagen. Jeffrey, the stage is here.
Perfect, thank you very much.
And the stage is yours. Thank you.
Willem.
Thank you very much.
Willem, thank you very much for the invitation to be here today. It's a pleasure to be in Amsterdam and have an opportunity to share some insights from Blask. So Blask is a gaming industry data intelligence platform that provides actionable insights about what is happening inside gaming markets. While we do provide holistic views over overall market trends, we provide granular insights that concatenates massive data sets, and that is inclusive of search engine traffic, clickstream traffic, public company reports, regulator reports, as well as a number of agents that we have within our enterprise that are automatically crawling all of the sites that come across our visibility. So in the earlier marketing panel, they referenced the fact that Blask follows 243 brands in the Dutch market. Of those, we have agents that are constantly looking at their, not just websites, but inside their casino lobbies to understand what games appear on which page. Thousands of games are available there, but we track all of the key first pages in order to see what players are actually looking for. And as the previous panelists were talking about, what is the search intent of consumers as they go onto their search engines or into their LLMs in order to find a product that they're interested in seeing. First, our disclaimer, we use sophisticated methodology in order to determine actionable insights for all of these markets. We're not infallible, but we're very happy to share our methodology with anybody who's curious. The very last slide of my presentation will include a QR code where you can download the full report. During this presentation, which I only have 17 more minutes to address, we're just going through the highlights of the report. But I encourage all of you to download it and then reach out to us if you'd like to learn more about Blask or have a conversation about any of it. So what we've done is we've done a very deep dive into the Dutch online gaming market in order to understand what consumers want, both in respect to the regulated and the unregulated offshore markets. And a few key findings that I think are important to share. First of all, live dealer search demand was much higher than slots, while blackjack effectively was 1 in every 5 searches that a consumer did online. And so it's important to note that the game preference does not necessarily mirror the revenue numbers we're seeing in the overall market. And there are a number of reasons for that, such as how an operator prioritizes games within their lobby and their marketing materials based on margin and overall profitability for the business. So sometimes a game may be less profitable as far as the hold, so they'll choose not to rank that in the top of the lobby. The other one is that the licensed lobby does not fully reflect player intent. And you heard about this in the previous panel, that many consumers are looking for specific titles, specific game types, and that demand is not being met by the regulated operators today. So if somebody is playing on Roobet, which is an Australian domiciled offshore operator that has incredible content in their streams, and they're looking for their originals, which are only available there. They search for that title, and it's only going to be available via VPN. There is an option to then encourage your locally regulated game suppliers to create competitive content in order to meet the consumer demand. Blackjack, enormously popular in the Netherlands. And then as far as the active market here, we do track 243 brands, and there is a constant stream of new brands entering the market. Between February and April of 2026, we tracked more than 20 new brands entering the Dutch market, and some of that may be that some are getting shut down or voluntarily shutting down and just rebranding and launching a new operation. No problem at all. This is the perfect beatboxing microphone. Okay, so what Blask measures and how. We have a number of different KPIs that we track inside the industry across both offshore and onshore operators. And we have a Blask index, which includes how each operator is performing in respect to market share trends. It is very granular. So for each one of the 243 operators we track in the Netherlands, we can tell you how they're performing month to month and what is happening in respect to their market share gains. We then correlate their performance with what games are available, what promotions are there, and a number of other metrics in order to provide very reasonable and well-defined estimates on how much revenue is being generated. From that, we can then extrapolate outward on how much tax is not being paid here. And we do share a lot of this information with some stakeholders in the Netherlands who use that to help formulate their operations as well as their public policy initiatives. We also spend a lot of time on search intent, and we use blended across multiple languages and understanding of what consumers are looking for in respect to game types and specific titles. We are able to see what games people are playing, both in respect to game categories as well as specific titles. So we see that 80.5% of the licensed operators in the Netherlands have a consistent categorization and prioritization, definitely favoring slots. And then if you look at the providers, I mean, we're all conscious of who the big B2B games content suppliers are in the regulated market in the Netherlands. But as we go into the offshore market, you will notice some similarity with some of these providers. Now, some of them are not necessarily as prescriptive in respect to enforcing, how operators offer their games globally, and others will say you cannot offer them globally, but sometimes they're still available through VPNs. It's important to note that I understand that Pragmatic Play have now taken proactive steps to stop their games from being available in the Netherlands. So the data I'm sharing here today was accurate as of the 27th of April. Any changes that have occurred since then are not reflected in our graphs or in the presentation today. But you will notice that some of the providers who are providing games were able to not only show you what game types and specific titles are available in the Netherlands, but which operators are offering the games and how they're prioritizing them. Were I a regulator looking at opportunities to enforce a well-regulated market, I would keep in mind that some of these suppliers are publicly listed and all of them are actively exhibiting at the major gaming conferences across Europe. They're not impossible to find. So most of the repeated titles across the licensed operators' top 10s are games we know and that are incredibly popular globally and certainly across Europe. Big Bass Splash, if you like fishing, many people do, and Book of the Dead are absolutely dominant. And it's interesting for me to note that even though these are the most popular games in the country, only 4 of the top 10 operators actually feature these games on the first page of their lobby. And there are a number of reasons why they can do that. It's probably driven by commercial prioritization, but it may also be that they're not yet following market trends. So there's opportunities here for operational efficiency and even deeper consumer engagement by people who are looking at some of our data. From the offshore operators' top 10s, interestingly, it's a similar title for number 1, but it's offered by a different games publisher, and there are a number of reasons why that could be the case. But we certainly look through the list here. Again, Hacksaw, publicly listed in Sweden, we're operating the number 8 most popular game available through offshore casinos in the Netherlands. Just stating that as a matter of fact. But you can see a list here of which offshore operators are operating which games and how it appears inside their games lobbies. And some of the most visible games from a licensed perspective are actually quite different than from an unlicensed perspective, but it's interesting to watch how consumers are resonating with various titles and content types. Again, further to what we were hearing earlier today, the demand for crash games is evidently not being met by the regulated onshore operators, so here's an opportunity for them to capture a larger share of the market by shifting their product proposition, but also to note that many of the consumers in the Netherlands who are seeking these games are only finding them from an offshore perspective. A lot of the titles that are specifically in demand are those that are promoted through the phenomenal streaming content that is largely available through the offshore operators, most of whom are based in Australia. And so as we dive into that from an offshore perspective, you're able to see which these titles are and how they're prioritized from a slots perspective. But on the genre mix, it's also important to note that live games are very much in demand, and there's some really interesting innovation in respect to live dealer games today, using artificial intelligence to overlay on human beings. There's tremendous innovation occurring on the offshore space with the B2B suppliers. The Dutch regulator was very open about inviting operators to come into the well-regulated market. I would consider also looking at some of the most innovative B2B suppliers and inviting them to also come into the well-regulated market to offer their competitive games to the licensed operators here, because that is a proactive, commercially driven approach towards creating a more competitive and fulsome operating environment. Crash games in particular are much easier to find offshore because they're prioritized on the first page of many of the lobbies of the offshore operators. They understand that as a result of many of the streamers who are doing live streaming of aviator games and similar games, that those specific titles are in high demand from the much younger demographic who are typically no longer watching not only television, but not even YouTube or Netflix or Apple TV. They're following the majority of their content on kick.com, which does unabated content for live streaming of live casino play. And it's interesting to note, one of these operators is servicing games in both the licensed and the offshore markets. Those are very interesting conversations that could be had at a regulatory level to gain some further insight into how that occurs. Offshore lobbies also show a broader genre shelf in respect to really taking a deeper understanding of search intent optimization to make sure that they're meeting consumer demand, particularly for the younger demographic who are more proactively embracing not only these brands and the content, but also crypto payments because of how seamless and friction-free that may be. And there are a lot of different reasons why that may be the case. But as you dive further into these operations, there's a lot to learn. What Dutch players are actually searching for are, in many cases, very specific titles, and not just specific slots, but specific crash games, specific live dealers as well. And if you look at the titles, it gives you a very strong understanding of the kind of games that players love, both from an offshore and an onshore perspective. So there is clearly a gap that exists in the market today between what the offshore and the onshore operators are offering. There are commercial and regulatory approaches that can be taken in order to close that gap and increase the supply to meet the demand. And we strongly encourage a deeper dive into the data to understand those consumer trends. My recommendation would be that benchmarking occurs between that delta to understand where there may be a supply gap and then seek to close it. On the game supplier's perspective, I certainly would be proactive in respect to including a broader range of innovative suppliers who are not focused on the regulated market, and encourage them to come in with any number of different levers that could be available to do so. And then on the affiliates and the media side, to really understand what the younger demographics are doing in respect to content consumption and how they're engaging with brands and content, because there's an opportunity there to really think more forward in respect to how future generations of online gamblers and people who are looking for real money digital entertainment may seek to engage with brands domestically. And only by doing that do you have an opportunity to extend the protected gaming ecosystem and really create opportunity for higher degrees of channelization. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And as Jeffrey said, you can download the full report. It includes some additional pages that there was no time for today. I think we had one question from the audience coming in, and it's right in front of you here now. Jeffrey, do you recognize that players may search for what they can't immediately find rather than for the familiar games they mostly play?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the motivations for consumers to find information, increasingly with artificial intelligence, is a constant. And by looking at the search data on a categorized, normalized basis, you can really understand how and when that consumer demand is being met. And so we see that being met on a bifurcated side, a bifurcated place, where a large amount of those searches are only being met by results available in the offshore market.
Yeah, great. Jeffrey, once again, thank you very much. Jeffrey will be around and you can download the full report. So see you later. Thank you very much. Thank you.